Hello and welcome back to Mr. Kendrick's online math class. This is the second lesson for 2.4, multiplying and dividing rational numbers, and this video will focus on fractions. Go ahead and turn to the next blank page in your math notebook and put this heading at the top. Alright, first thing we need to write down is the rule to multiply or divide rational numbers. We're going to use the same rules as we did for integers. And again, here is the tic-tac-toe grid that tells us about our answer. If we multiply a positive times a negative, we'll get a negative. Negative times a positive, we'll get a negative. And negative times a negative, we'll get a positive. And positive times a positive will equal a positive. So in our problem, if there is an odd number of negatives, our answer is going to be negative. If there's an even number of negatives, our answer is going to be positive. Alright, the second thing we'll be writing down in our notes is the rules for multiplying fractions. The first question we need to ask ourselves by looking at the problem, will our answer be positive or negative? And then we want to make sure if we have a mixed number, we want to change the mixed number into an improper fraction. And we're going to, over here, we do not need to worry about getting common denominators. Do not worry about getting common denominators. We can just multiply like normal. Multiply with the fractions that we got. Number 3 says cross-cancel if possible. Now cross-canceling allows us to simplify the fractions before we multiply. Okay, and when we cross-cancel, we're going to cross-cancel diagonally. So if you look down here, we have 3/4 times 12/15, and we can cross-cancel 3/15. We can divide both by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3, and we will get 1 and 5. Okay, and then the other side, 4 and 12, they have a common factor of 4, so we can divide both of these by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. Okay, and then we'll have 1 here and 3 over here, so our fraction now becomes 1/1 times 3/5. And then we can, when we're working with smaller numbers, it's much easier for us to multiply, so then we can multiply straight across and we'll get 3/5. So if we're able to cross cancel, it allows us to simplify before we do the multiplication and keep our numbers as small as possible. Okay, number 4, multiply straight across, and then lastly, simplify if you can. Okay, so make sure you have these notes written down and also the cross-canceling example so you can refer back to it as you're working with practice problems. For here, I would like you just to watch as I work through these problems, and then you'll have a chance to do some on your own. Alright, so the first one, 8/9 times -3/4. First, I'm going to ask myself, is my answer going to be positive or negative? And in this case, our answer is going to be negative because we have one negative in our problem. And then before I do the math, I'm going to see if I can cross-cancel, and in this situation I can. So cross-canceling here, you can divide by 4, and divide by 4 will leave us with 2 up top and a 1 over here. So dividing by 4, and then this way we can cross-cancel by dividing by 3. And if we divide by 3, we'll be left with 1. Divide by 3, we'll be left with 3. So now we can set up our problem down below, and we have 2/3 times 1/1. Whoops. Okay, and then we can multiply straight across, and we'll end up with 2/3. And remember, we had one negative in our problem, so our answer is going to be a negative 2/3. Alright, for the second problem, we have -1 and 3/7 times -2. So looking if our answer is going to be positive or negative. Our answer is going to be a positive because we have two negatives, so they will cancel out and we'll end up with a positive. Next thing, we have we actually have two mixed numbers, so we're going to turn them into improper fractions. So multiply and add. 7 times 1 is 1, plus 3 is 10. 10 over 7 times, and then remember, any whole number we can just put it over 1 to create the fraction, and that's times 2 over 1. Okay, cross canceling in this situation, we cannot cross cancel, so we'll just multiply straight across. 10 times 2 is 20. 7 times 1 is 7. Okay, now we can turn that back into a mixed number. 7 goes into 20 two times, so we'll have 2, and then 7 times 2 is 14, so there'll be 6 left over, 6 sevenths. Okay, and then we have two negatives, so our answer is a positive 2 and 6 sevenths. Alright, now it's your turn. Go ahead and pause the video here, try these three problems out, and then come back and see how you did. Alright, for problem A, we have two negatives, so our answer is going to be positive. Okay, and then we can also look for cross cancellations. We have 6 and 9 here. We can cross cancel those if we divide by 3. So divide by 3, divide by 3, and we'll end up with 3 here and 2 here. 4 and 7 do not have common factors, so we cannot cross cancel there. We can reset up our problem over 4 over 3 times 2 over 7, and then we can multiply. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 7 is 21. And then if we try to simplify, 21 can't be divided by 2, so our answer is a positive 8 21sts, because both of our fractions in the problem are negative. Alright, for problem B, again there's two negatives, so our answer is going to be a positive. And then we can turn this mixed number into an improper fraction. So times plus. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9 over 4. And then we have times 4/5. Alright, we can cross cancel here by dividing by 4. And we'll be left with 1 and 1. So our problem now becomes 9 over 1 times 1 over 5. We can multiply. 9 times 1 is 9. 1 times 5 is 5. And then turn that into a mixed number. 5 goes into 9 one time, so we have 1 whole, and then 4/5 left over. Again, because our problem has two negatives, our answer is a positive 1 4/5. Alright, and then problem C, we have 2 times a negative 1 1/4. So looking at our problem, we have one negative, so our answer is going to be negative. So I'm just going to put a equals a negative, and then I'm going to rewrite the problem as 2 over 1 times negative 1 1/4. Turn this mixed number into an improper fraction. 4 times 1 plus 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So we got 2 over 1 times 5/4. Okay, cross canceling. We can cross cancel here by dividing by 2. So divide by 2 and divide by 2, and we'll be left with 1 and 2. So now we got 1 over 1 times 5 over 2, and now we can do our multiplication. And 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. So we got 5 over 2, and then we can turn that back into a mixed number. 2 goes into 5 2 times, and then there'll be 1 left over. Okay? And remember, we have 1 negative in our problem, so our answer is a negative 2 1/2. Alright, so those are some examples of multiplying fractions with negatives and positives, and now we'll look at division. Alright, dividing fractions. Go ahead and write these notes down in your math notebook. First thing we need to ask ourselves, will our answer be negative or positive? And we find that by looking at our tic-tac-toe chart. If we have 1 negative in our problem, our answer is going to be negative. If we have 2 negatives in our problem, our answer is going to be positive. And if we're multiplying or dividing positives, our answer will stay as a positive. Okay? Ask yourselves, will it be positive or negative? And then we're going to change mixed numbers to improper fractions. And then the nice thing about dividing fractions is they are really the same as multiplying fractions. When we keep the first fraction, change the multiplication to, or division to multiplication, and then we flip the second fraction, which means that we are multiplying by the reciprocal. And lastly, simplify if you can. And we will also see if we can cross cancel while we're dividing as well. Alright, go ahead and watch these 2 examples, and then you'll have a chance to do some on your own. Alright, the first one, we got negative 3/10 divided by negative 4/5. So will our answer be negative or positive? It's going to be positive because we have 2 negatives. Okay, so I'm just going to make note of that our answer is going to be positive. And then I'm going to rewrite the problem over here. We have 3/10. We're going to change this division to multiplication. So multiply, and then we're going to flip this last fraction, or multiply by the reciprocal. So our reciprocal is going to be 5 over 4. Okay, now we have it set up in a multiplication problem, and we can see if we can cross cancel. In this situation, we can cross cancel here by dividing by 5. Divide by 5, and we'll be left with 2 here and 1 here. So now our fraction is 3 over 2 times 1/4. Now we can multiply. 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 4 is 8. So we get 3/8, and we look to see if we can simplify, and in this situation we cannot simplify. So our answer is a positive 3/8 because we have 2 negatives. Alright, the second example, they're both mixed numbers, so I went ahead and changed them into improper fractions. So we have negative 9/2 divided by 7/5, and we have 1 negative in our problem, so our answer is going to be a negative. And then we can go ahead and reset up our problem, which would be, in the multiplication problem, negative 9 over 2 times the reciprocal of 7/5, which is 5/7. Look for some cross cancellation. There is none here, so we got, we're going to get 45 over 14. And we can go ahead and change that into an improper fraction. So 14 goes into 45. 14 times 2 is 28, plus 14 would give us 42, so it would go in 3 times. And then there would be 3 14ths left over. Okay, remember, look back at your problem. We got 1 negative, so our answer is a negative 3 3/14. Alright, your turn. Go ahead and pause the video here, go through both of these examples, and then come back and see how you did. Alright, the first one, A, there's 2 negatives, so our answer is going to be positive. And then we can set up our problem as keeping the first fraction, changing division to multiplication, and then multiplying by the reciprocal, so that would be 2 over 1. Okay, now we have our problem reset up, and look for any cross cancellations. We cannot. So we multiply 6 times 2 is 12, and 5 times 1 is 5. Turn that back into a mixed number. 5 goes into 12 2 times, and there would be 2 left over. And because we have 2 negatives, our answer is a positive 2 2/5. The second one here, we got 1/3, and we're going to change this to multiplication, and then we need to change this mixed number into an improper fraction, so times plus, we got 6 8, so it's 8/3, and then we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, so that would be 3 over 8, and then we can cross cancel right here, dividing by 3. And now we get 1 and 1. So we got 1 over 1 times 1 over 8. And multiply, we get 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 8 is 8. And if we look back at our problem for positive or negative, we got 1 negative. So our answer is a negative 1/8.